Yo, check out my website, www.theclownthompson.net. That's clown spelled with K as you see here. As you see, here are my rants here. I'll be more and more regular in posting rants in the future. You see what I have going on here. Also, you can also get your merch here at www.cafepress.com. Search for the Clown Sports. You see here I have sweatshirts, hoodies, baby gear, mugs, t-shirts. So just come on over and grab yourself some merch.
We're up to tonight's. It's really been a while with my co-host here podcast. I'm Scott Burks. Please continue to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even if you do not agree with what I or my co-host has to say tonight, but guess I should say, have to say tonight, let's come anyway, because at any event, you'll be glad you did, and I'll be glad you did, and especially tonight, my co-host and guests will be glad that you did. Speaking of which, man, y'all know what this dude is. If you're familiar with the show, the yard/HBCU sports with about all things HBCU sports. Towards Sleazy Radio every Tuesday night on Facebook Live and YouTube. And last but not least, his great work on herosports.com as his basketball all things FCS athletics as they pertain to HBCUs. Dwayne Ash is back in the house. And in a very funny occasion, I have him on for a reason. How you doing, sir?
Man, Scott, I am doing wonderful, man. You know, the FCS, well, the college football season for Division II and FCS is now done.
Yes.
Got through another year, wonderful year, a lot of wonderful football played. Right. Getting ready for a lot of postseason action here, man, and just trying to get myself through these holidays as well while watching some good football, hopefully.
And that's also because this weekend, I know it's like FBS, it's just a rivalry weekend, everything, but there's some still good football on the FCS level, and it's going to hit our HBCU one way or another. So let's just get right to it. So our beloved conference, the MEAC, formerly A&T's home, as we all know, unfortunately. Well, before I get to that, let's just look at the rankings, man, of how HBCUs fared in this week's FCS coaches poll. We got Florida A&M, FAMU, clocking in at number 5 in the poll with a 10-1 record. With Central, they rose up one spot, but they were in the top 10 before a certain game against a certain squad with the MEAC title on the line. They're 13th right now, obviously, as I said before. When they lost to, drum roll please, Howard University. Freaking Howard University. 50-20. And the score wasn't even as close as the margin. Man, I mean, how can a team in Central, yes, it's a rivalry game, I get it, but still, Central had a spot in the Celebration Bowl on the line. All they had to do was take care of business against an underdog Howard squad, a sizable underdog, as it come to find out, and they got this boat raced. They got curb-stomped, violated, whatever major adjective. They got it. And the funniest part about that is, man, besides Howard clinching the MEAC title, they beat Norfolk State over the weekend. So congrats to them. They earned it. Even with a 6-5 record, that they tied Central at, I think it was 5-1 in the conference.
It was 4-1 in the conference. Actually, they beat Morgan State on Saturday. Matter of fact,
State, yeah.
That game still had championship game implications as well with Morgan State. Also,
that's right. They were
on the verge of winning the conference championship as well. Had North Carolina Central lost to Delaware State, but they decided, they were going to go ahead and boat race the Hornets at the crib. But let me get to the Howard North Carolina Central game first.
And I thought about you doing that route, by the way. So the floor is yours, sir. Talk all the shit. Talk all the spring, all the smoke. Bring about violence. Be about that violence. We're both Aggies here. I am all for it. I've been thinking. I thought about this since that game. So the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I'm going to start by saying this. There is not much I can say as an Aggie based upon the football performance that our program has put on this year, being 1-10.
Right.
Let me say that before it's all over the comments, and chances are it's going to be all over the comments.
It's going to be all over the comments. Yeah, right.
Yes, we know they were 1-10. I get it. It was going to be a bad year, but I also had a feeling it would be a bad year with them moving over to the CAA as well. That is not a surprise on me. What we're going to talk about, though, is we're going to talk about that Howard Central game and everything leading up to it. As we all know, or for those that don't know, Central and Howard finished as co-champions last season, but Central mollywopped Howard last year, put up 50 points on them. And because of that head-to-head matchup, they were the ones to move on to Atlanta to face Jackson State and win the Celebration Bowl in 2022. Fast forward to August of this year, you get to the MEAC Media Day, and of course, it's been put out there that not only did Central have Celebration Bowl and MEAC championship rings, but Howard also had co-championship rings as well. It was brought to the attention of head coach Trey Oliver. He referred to those rings as class rings. Coach Larry Scott did not take kindly to it, even though he didn't necessarily react too wildly. He did let it be known that the comments were heard. And of course, even once the schedule came out, everyone had that date circled because, of course, both teams were co-champions. You fast forward up into the first week of November. Howard goes to South Carolina State, and shout out to Buddy Pugh. This was his last season as head coach at South Carolina State. Unfortunately, he didn't have the year that he wanted to have. They did finish 5-6, and they did end up finishing the year on a high note, defeating Norfolk State on the road. But that first week in November, they did beat Howard on the road 27-24, where their running back by committee down there almost put up 400 yards of total rushing against that Bison defense. So if Howard went into that game against North Carolina Central, big underdogs, I get it, because I actually picked against them as well. But Howard, they came out to play that game, and my God, whatever you want to say,
they played.
It was reported that several players on Central's team was dealing with a bout of the flu. And playing that game against Howard, they also had some injuries on the offensive line. Howard didn't care because you play to win the game, right? Isn't that what your boy said, Herm Edwards?
You play to win the game.
Play to win the
game. Doing the
yes, right. and to quote Jay Walker, the things that make you laugh are the things that make you cry, because to return the favor of Central putting 50 up on Howard last year, when Howard had the opportunity to do so, they put up 50 on Central. So, the fate of the championship was now in the hands of Howard. They needed to beat a very tough Morgan State defense for them to win the championship. Now, for clarity, for a lot of people who didn't realize, now, the MEAC, after this past season of having years of co-champions, where teams have the same conference record, regardless of the fact that, they may have beaten them head-to-head. Yes, they've beaten them head-to-head, and yes, the winner of the head-to-head matchup would become the Celebration Bowl representative, but they still named co-champions. So to alleviate that, they got rid of that regardless of the record. And because Howard beat Central head-to-head, and Howard was able to hold on to defeat Morgan State this past weekend, 14-7, over in Green Stadium, your 2023 MEAC champions are Howard University, 30 years later after them winning the championship in 1993. So congratulations to head coach Larry Scott. There was some a mix-up there during the presentation where he was referred to as Harry. I found that funny. And the team chanted Larry for the rest of the presentation. But to Larry Scott and his football team, the seniors on that squad who had a remarkable year, now they get an opportunity for the very first time to represent the MEAC in Atlanta in the Celebration Bowl. Now, the question is, who will they face? Actually, before we get to that, I got to go ahead and shout this out real quick.
Sure,
Shout out to me for predicting that Howard would win the MEAC. You can go back into the annals of HeroSports.com and look at my MEAC preview, where I wrote that they would win the MEAC, and they did what I thought they would do. But no one wanted to listen to me. I got laughed at, not only by Central alums, but by other fans within the MEAC. But, God save me from going to Central.
Yeah.
Alleviated that pain. Hey, say what you want. 1 in 10. It is what it is. I don't even want to go about the whole matchup between A&T and Central. And forget about the fact that Central beat us this year. I get it. It happens. Good teams. Things go, but that's not what the conversation. The conversation is who won this year. But Central season's not over, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But for Howard, who will they face? Out of the SWAC, they'll be facing the winner of the SWAC championship, which will take place next week. Mm-hmm. And that will be Florida A&M, the winners of the West Division. As predicted, whoever came out of that Orange Blossom Classic in week 1 was going to end up being the Eastern Division champion. And that's exactly what happened. Congratulations, Florida A&M. But the surprise coming out of the SWAC this year in the Western Division is a team that was predicted to finish 5th, not only by me, but the coaches and the SIs in the SWAC, Prairie View A&M.
Yeah, man.
Came from out of nowhere.
Well, overall 6-5 record, but still, they did what they had to do in conference play. So
exactly right. Yeah, so they were capable of winning the division, beating out Alcorn State and Grambling. I was hoping for chaos. That chaos, would have been Alcorn State and Prairie View A&M, who unfortunately I did pick to lose this past weekend, and they both won. But I was hoping that they will both lose so that the SWAC West could come down to the Bayou Classic this coming Saturday between Grambling and Southern. Why? Yeah. Because Southern, after losing to Prairie View A&M a week prior, fired their head coach, Eric Dooley, not today, but last Monday, as they ended up falling short from making it to or being able to contend for the SWAC the SWAC divisional championship this year. I just thought that would have been interesting for that game to be the deciding factor for the division, with a team that has an interim coach going up against a team that is looking to regain success after not having it for a few years. But Prairie View A&M comes from out of nowhere. They go to Florida A&M. Well, Florida A&M has not lost a football game. They're on like an 17, 18 game win streak right now at the crib. They're going to be tough to beat. So chances are, unless Prairie View surprises everyone, it's going to potentially be a Howard Florida A&M Celebration Bowl going on. And you're talking about two huge brands in HBCU and HBCUs going to Atlanta to play in this game. I'm intrigued to see what the attendance numbers are going to be if that is the matchup.
See, that's the thing, because I count myself in this. A lot of people were a little disappointed, very disappointed that you didn't have Central going against FAMU, because those were on paper the two best teams in all of HBCU FCS, right? Mm-hmm. And again, on paper, wasn't even close because both teams were ranked high.
Yes.
In the FCS poll all season long. And everyone and mama thought that it was going to come down between those two. It would have been a compelling matchup as well, because you had two great teams. Mm-hmm. Two of the better teams in all of FCS, to be honest with you, record-wise. But you got to win your conference, got to take care of business. Howard did just that. But to your point about brands, Howard is, to all due respect to Central, Howard is a much, much bigger brand than Central. It is a much bigger brand. It's a much bigger brand. Now, because I think, due to the fact it's a huge brand, I expect a huge power contingent.
I hope so.
I
right?
expect a huge Howard contingent because they're a brand. They're going to be on ESPN2. They're going against another brand in FAMU.
Mm-hmm.
And you know FAMU is going to show up and show out. You know the fandom's going to come up for that. I mean, the short drive to Atlanta. I mean, you know they're going to come up to that. Like for that. And they've been quoting about that ever since they joined the SWAC. So I think it's going to be a big crowd. I think
Mm-hmm.
for FAMU, they travel well anyway. They're going to make that relatively short 2-hour drive to the ATL, and I'm banking on Howard again. The brand name, several alums, a lot of them like quite a few high profile alums. They will be there too. They will. I believe they're gonna come down from DC, hook up by crook, and show it in the A. I think it's probably gonna be one of the highest attended Celebration Bowls in quite some time. I truly think so.
Well, there's some people who believe so. I question that, Scott, because Howard has not been known to be a program that travels.
Sure.
Now, it would be wonderful if their famous alums, even though one of them is dealing with some legal issues right now, but if that that ballyhooed alumni base is able to bring out their friends, and then of course you have fans that are willing to come just to see this brand come out and play in Howard, that would be a wonderful thing. You know, we've had games before where Howard has played on the road. They've done well as it pertains to New York. You know, they're able to get 30,000 there. Right. You know, when they've had the New York Classics and I forget, in the Brick City Classic, I believe they played in recently as well against Morehouse and Morgan State. But when they've had the MEAC SWAC Challenge this past, not this year, but last year, attendance numbers weren't that high. They weren't that great.
Yeah.
But hopefully it changes now that the title is on the line. But to answer your question with Florida A&M, they've been thirsty to come to the Celebration Bowl for years. So especially those years where they had great teams in the MEAC, and be it because they lost the last game of the season in the Florida Classic to Bethune-Cookman, or they end up having self-imposed sanctions that they had to deal with and had to come up short and watch A&T go to the Celebration Bowl and win, especially in years where they've had better records than A&T. This fan base is starving for this win. And if they can get it, I truly believe that they will show up and show out in Atlanta. But the intriguing thing is, what happens if Prairie View A&M wins? You know,
I get your point. I don't see it happening. It's gonna be at the crib and Tally. I just don't see that shit happening. I think FAM, this been talking this talk ever since they joined the SWAC.
Oh yeah, they have.
They're not going to overlook. I mean, I'm sure the coaching staff going to have them focus on laser focus on Prairie View. The fans will make sure to be laser focused because that's a raucous fan base there in Tally, man. So you make a valid point about Prairie View sneaking up on folks this year, but I think fans will take care of this, and it might be a blowout. Just saying.
They should be able to take care of business, but I'm just saying, any given Saturday, anything can happen.
True. That's fair.
But you said something about the matchup between Florida A&M and Central being a wonderful matchup and being two power teams. I want people not to sleep on the fact of what Howard has done this year. Yes, they're 6-5. I get that, but their losses for the most part have been tough losses. They had a real close game against Eastern Michigan. They lost by 10, but that game could have been a lot closer. Again, like I said, I think I may have said it before during the show, but they've been dealing with a lot of special team issues, special team gaffes in the beginning of the year that they've kind of corrected as the season went on. But if not for special team issues, Eastern Michigan, that could have been a dub. Hampton was a late loss for them against a big rival at NDC. And Northwestern is another game that they only lost by 3 to Northwestern. So this team has been relatively competitive for the most part. Throw the Harvard game out the window. But for the most part, they've been relatively competitive throughout the entire year. And, this team is talented on both sides of the ball. You talk about Quentin Williams, the quarterback, the senior QB that has had a remarkable year. That running back by committee that they have with Jared, and Edgerrin James' son, Eaton James, and the talented wide receiver Hawthorne. That offense can go and put up points, as we already said. They put up 50 on Central, and then also that defense is rather talented as well. Darren Brokenberg, the senior defensive end, and Kenny Gallup, the senior safety out of the Tidewater area. They don't. This is like South Carolina State. Don't let this 6-5 record fool you. This team is actually good. I know it's hard to say how is football good in the same sentence without saying Jay Walker's name. I get it, but this team is pretty good. And I know they've had their struggles this year, but again, they've shown what they can do. They can put it together a complete game. And I expect them to be competitive against whoever it is that they face in the Celebration Bowl midway through December.
All right. Before we continue, give a quick shout out to my sponsor, BetUs.com. So listen to sports bettors. Your favorite sports book, BetUs.com, is back for our 30th year of NFL action. So with the industry's biggest sign-up bonus up to 200%, BetUs offers our members the opportunity to cash in for all your favorite sports, including NFL, UFC, and MLB. And if you're looking for live in-game betting, incredible odds, daily odds, boosters, props, and parlays, we got it. How about fast payouts and exceptional one or more customer service? We got that too. So log into BETUS.com or call 800-792-3887. That's 800-79-BET-US. Use the promo code TKT for the Klown Times as well. BetUS.com, where the game begins. All right, a few more things about the FCS side before we switch to the Division II side. Going back to Florida A&M, how strong of a year they've had. 10-1, we already mentioned that, all the things. You realize that FAMU was a close loss to South Florida early in the season, week 2, away from being undefeated.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me, man. I mean, they were competitive in that South Florida game too. So just imagine if FAMU would have run the table by beating an FBS opponent. That would be too cool. That would be too cool. So again, shout out to I mean, because they were, one more thing about that, they were within 7 points in the fourth quarter. Before before South Florida scored a little bit later to make it a 2-score game, 2-touchdown victory. But when I saw that game, when I saw that game and the highlights, I was like, yo, these guys look good.
Yeah. But if you let Coach Simmons tell it, they haven't played a perfect game this year yet either. So they're still waiting to see if they can get that game yet too. Maybe it's this well, not this week, but the following week when they play in the championship game that they get that perfect game. But it'll be intriguing to see exactly once again how well they look. But that win streak that they have down in Tallahassee has been rather impressive.
And one more thing about that game, they outgained South Florida.
Yeah.
More first downs, but what killed them was 5 turnovers.
5 turnovers will get you, man.
Killed them. But yeah, shout out to them. And one last thing, man, we pick on Central, and deservedly so. We don't like Central, but they have something, and they're throwing it in the faces, and now their families not the only ones that be doing so, throwing in the faces of our Aggies and to a certain extent Hampton. Is that Central still gets to qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah.
They play at Richmond this Saturday. And there's a meme going around that said A&T looking around like leaving the HBCU conferences, looking at other teams and still in HBCU conferences, like going to the playoffs. So some to that effect. So they thought they would be clever there, but you know, it is what it is. But shout out to Central. They're going to the playoffs. You know, should be a very competitive matchup against Richmond. So I guess they'll have to find out.
Oh, this is what I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about that matchup, right? So Central, like you said, 9-2, goes to the playoffs to face Richmond. And I don't even want to get into the semantics about the A&T move to the CAA. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. The thing is this: Central's going to the playoffs, the FCS playoffs, for the very first time ever.
Right.
They go to Richmond. facing a team on the road who they have a better record than. I'm not going to get into the politics of the FCS playoffs right now, too. That's another conversation for another time, too. But I have a feeling that Central could go into Richmond and beat Richmond. I've actually went to Richmond earlier this year, first week of the season, and watched Morgan State beat up on Richmond.
Yep.
If Central can go in and be physical with them too, they can most definitely do it to them as well. Now, the key is, another key, over the past 2 years, Central is 4-0 against CAA schools. So it's not without the realm of possibility they can beat Richmond and actually move on the following week, face another CAA team in Albany and beat them too in Albany. So I am definitely afraid as an Aggie to see Central potentially make a run within the playoffs. But as an HBCU fan, that is highly possible, bro.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And I said before, like we were going to move into Division II. I forgot to show Tennessee State a little bit of love. They finished the season 6-5, 2-4 in the Big South. They got the asses shut out by Tennessee Tech, which was Tennessee Tech's first ever shutout. Tennessee State, so that's a bit embarrassing there. But how would you assess Coach Eddie George's tenure at Tennessee State, given what he had to deal with and everything else with the infrastructure and politics there and everything else? How would you assess Eddie George so far as a head coach?
For a program that's getting little to no fan base support, he's been able to turn that program around, and for them to go ahead and continue to get better year in and year out, and now they got a winning record this year, I completely applaud him and everything that they've done this year. Yeah,
well, that's great, man. That's great. So we'll see. He's committed to sticking it out there. I don't know if he's had any overtures or not, but we're good for him for sticking it out and see how everything goes. So shout out to Eddie George. So let's get to the Division II right quick. I'm gonna mention something about the playoffs, but if you want to fill in as far as like the SWAC, what your thoughts on the SWAC and the CWA, like years coming to an end, like, well, they already ended, before the playoffs. But I think there were only one HBCU that made the Division II playoffs. That was Virginia Union, and they got.
It was two.
Oh, so which was the other one? I'm sorry.
Oh, of course, the two conference champions get automatic bids. So Virginia Union, the 2023
Benedict,
CIAA champions.
Benedict. Yeah, Benedict's the other one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, Virginia Union coming in as a 2023 CIAA champion, defeated Fayetteville State in the championship game. They came into the playoffs, and they unfortunately they took an L against Kutztown. My God, what was it, 38-17?
Yeah, 38-14. Yeah,
I'm sorry, 38-14. So they beat they lost to Kutztown 38-14, being eliminated, but they had a wonderful year this year. So shout out to Virginia Union and the year that they had. But the Benedict, my God, for second straight year, going undefeated. Them boys is tough. And so much so, they're the number one seeded within their region.
Yeah.
So they get to host the game this week, and they get to host Lenore Ryan. But Lenore Ryan ain't no slouch. They just put up 63 in their playoff win against Shepherd out of West Virginia. They beat was that 63-17. I'm looking at make sure I'm wearing glasses with my eyesight. 63-17. Yes.
Yeah, it was
they put a pounding on Shepherd last week. Well, I'm sorry, Saturday. So it won't be a cakewalk potentially for Benedict, but Benedict has looked strong throughout the year, and they've been nationally ranked throughout the year as well. So this should be a good test for them, and hopefully they can start a run themselves.
How well? I mean, we have to give a shout out to Benedict, man. They've been on a roll the past few seasons.
Oh yeah.
They've been on a big roll.
Yeah, Coach Prairie has most definitely come into that program, turned that program around. I don't know if you ever heard Coach Prairie talk, but every time I hear that dude talk, I'm like, yo, my body may not be able to get you more than 4 games, but if you can get me some eligibility, coach, I can give you like 4 plays. Because this dude is most definitely inspiring to listen to every time he talks. He gets me riled up every time I hear him. And there are a lot of people who say he might be a candidate to take over for Buddy Pugh down in South Carolina State. I hope that's not the case. I would love to see him. It's not to say that I don't want South Carolina State to have a great coach like Coach Berry. Not to diminish Coach Berry and his coaching skills as well. I would just love to see Benedict to continue to have a great coach there and continue to make that program into a potential a D2 powerhouse there. But if that's what he decides to do, if he's offered a job, then congratulations to him. But again, I would love to see him make Benedict a D2 power there. But it's all waiting to see exactly how that game plays out this upcoming Saturday against Lenoir-Rhyne.
I need, before we move to this, before we conclude our show with thoughts on the CIAA, I need Morehouse. I need the Atlanta schools to at least do something, to do a little something. Morehouse and Clark Atlanta combined for 1 year.
Yeah.
That's sad. Yeah. That's sad. Come on now. Y'all, those are talk about name brands. Those are two name brand institutions.
Yeah.
Y'all, they can't be doing this, man. They can't be. I don't need Morehouse finishing 1-9 and the Clark finish 0-10. I don't need that. But Monty Jones is probably somewhere saying, God damn it, between these teams. Then again, he probably doesn't care. I don't know. But
well, I'm gonna tell you like this, based upon what I see and what I know from people who I know that both went to Morehouse and to Spelman, they don't care. They don't care. And it's not to say that the program doesn't care either. But when I say the true definition of student athletes, and they're more like they most definitely are student athletes there, where they're most definitely students first. Especially at Morehouse. Clark, I don't know. I'm not that entrenched in, especially in SEAC football, to know all the issues that's going on down there. But you're right; it's been something that's been questioned around the SEAC brain trust and trying to figure out exactly why they can't seem to get those programs up and running into a respectable programs. I don't know.
Well, we'll close the show on this. Give me your final thoughts on the CIAA, man. Like, are they going to go divisionless next year, or they're going to keep divisions?
That's a wonderful question. I
hope they're good.
If you're asking, well, I mean, you are asking me, but I would say anyone who's doing divisions should do away with them. But let me add this caveat.
Yeah.
Right. I've had this conversation recently about the SWAC and whether or not they should go divisionless as well. And I say yes. And I'm going to say, and I'm saying this with this caveat, and I want people to understand this. I understand that travel can be difficult for HBCU programs. What you can still continue to do is play a divisionless conference,
right? But
schedule your games the same way you scheduled your divisional games anyway.
Sure.
How hard is that? It's the same schedule. I'm only yelling because I've had to push this point through to someone on social media recently, and for whatever reason, they wouldn't listen to me. Keep the same schedule, but play a divisionless.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Keep the same schedule. You still play the same people within your region,
right?
And just like you did as if you were in a division, you rotate those games against those teams that would have been in the other division.
Correct.
Every 3 or 4 years, and do a home situation where you rotate that as well, right? Travel would still be the same, because I tried to explain to him, you talk about how much travel is an issue within the SWAC. Guess what? Florida A&M had to go to Houston this year to face Texas Southern.
Yeah.
You want to talk about travel stretching from Tallahassee to Houston?
And they probably didn't fly.
I'm going to say that they flew. I'm going to hope that they flew.
I'm
going to pray that they flew. God hopes that they flew.
Yeah.
But still, it's still a ways away. Matter of fact, I think I may have said this on the show last year. There have been complaints about how far away the Florida teams were, and as it pertains to traveling for the fan bases, and how difficult it was for them to go see their teams play there. I said that was going to be the case when they moved to the conference, but nobody wanted to listen to me either then. Sure. That's why I tried to tell people that moving to the SWAC the travel was not the issue why those teams moved to the SWAC, but that's another conversation for another time. do divisionless, but keep your schedule as if you were still playing in the divisions. It would be as successful. And you would have had a situation over the past 2 years where the SWAC championship game probably would have been Jackson State and Florida A&M.
Yeah. Instead
of like a team that has the third or fourth or fifth best record coming out of the SWAC, facing the team with the best record in the SWAC. Then probably, actually the SEAC is already doing divisionless, but they had their issue where they had, the 4 teams tied for second place. So yeah, you have that issue. You just had to have a situation where tie breaking is most definitely put into effect, and when you have a situation like that. But yes, it will still be a competitive race. I want to say that too, because that was other conversation said too, that it won't be it will still be a competitive race for first and second place. That will still exist, but you won't have a situation where, like this year within the SWAC, you have Florida A&M, the best team, playing against the third best team in Prairie View A&M. So yeah, I would welcome it for the CIAA to see how that would play out. I'm not necessarily familiar with the records. I will be intrigued to see if that is a situation where the 2 best teams every year are facing each other. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I think this may have been, with the expansion where they don't play everybody now because it's, of course, not enough weeks. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But again, I'm not true CIAA, and there are probably a ton of CIAA fans who will want to fight me for even suggesting that they should move away from divisions. But again, if there's a situation where the 2 best teams aren't necessarily facing each other in the championship game, I would suggest that you do that. But I've already given you the way in which you can get around that. Why? Because other D1 conferences like the Pac-12, like the Big Ten, the ACC, have all done away. The Big 12 was already doing it, but those conferences are already.
And the Big Ten will do it next year. This is the last year of division. Yeah.
Yes. So, those conferences are doing away with it. I understand that they have the money to do the traveling. Get out of my face. Shut up. I've already given you the answer to that. Keep doing the scheduling the way that you currently have it, but just do it as conference without the divisions, but still schedule as if you're having the divisional play. So that's your answer. If I was to do it, that's how I would do it. I'm hoping that the powers that be are listening to my suggestion on how to make that possible, if that's something that they're thinking about. If their brain trusts are all saying that they can't do it because of travel, I've already given you your answer on how you could do it with traveling.
And you're welcome, everyone.
And you got game for free. I went against my rules of giving the game away for free, and here you go. Yeah, so I'm giving you free game, boy. Snoop Dogg will be pissed at me right now. Yeah.
So where can anyone see your great work and what you're doing, everything, your podcast? Where can they find you, sir?
They can always find me at herosports.com, doing my weekly predictions and weekly previews of matchups for the FCS. And always, you can find me on social media at The Yard HBCU, as I'm still in the midst of getting my website back together and ready. Nice. With things that are renewed and everything. Hopefully for the new year, we get that up and running and get that operational the way that I used to have it going. I've kind of stepped away from doing that and focused on social media, but we're going to get back to doing that. But before we move on, before we go, Scott, I got to shout these 2 things out.
Yes, please.
I don't know if you knew about these things or not, but I had to bring them up. Number 1, the first ever the D2 HBCU bowl game will be taking place Wednesday, December 13th.
Okay.
In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where they pit a CIAA team against a SEAC team. So this year's representatives will be the 3rd place team out of the CIAA, Johnson C. Smith, and the 4th place team out of the CIAA, Johnson C. Smith, and the 3rd place team out of the SEAC, Albany State.
That's cool, man.
So Albany State Johnson C. Smith in this Florida Beach Bowl, December 13th, Wednesday. I believe the game will be streamed. Once I have more information on where that game is going to be streamed at, I will most definitely post it on social media to be shared out so everyone will have a way to watch this game. I feel as though it's going to be a very interesting matchup between these two programs. And then also, if you didn't know, Friday, December 15th, the Friday before the Celebration Bowl in Atlanta, I believe it's also going to be in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium as well. ESPN will be sponsoring a Band of the Year Battle of the Bands going on down there.
Really?
My guess is that you didn't know because you didn't bring it up, but I thought I'd go ahead and bring it up as well.
Nice.
Now, to run through this real quick, what they're doing is they've throughout the year, they've been having what I like to call, and I've heard other people say it as well, so it ain't just me. I'm not a genius. I'm not going to steal nobody's idea. They're kind of doing it like gymnastics, where they're actually doing it on a judging system, where they actually judge each band by 5 different categories. What they call auxiliaries, the drum majors, musicality, percussion, and picture/drill design. So those are the 5 categories in which they grade each band. And 3 times during the season, where each school will compete against another band, and they will rank them or grade them based upon their performances at the football games in which they played throughout the year. The only disadvantage is to schools like Tennessee State, North Carolina A&T, and Hampton is that they don't play against enough HBCUs to have those battles.
Gotcha.
Yes. So with that said, as of right now, the teams that are in first place, they're going to take 2 representatives from both Division I and Division II. Jackson State and Prairie View A&M are in the lead right now for Division I. Division II, as of right now, is Savannah State and Virginia State, where the final tally will come out, I believe, next weekend to decide which 4 schools will be participating in the Battle of the Bands this year for Band of the Year.
Awesome. So please check that out, everyone. I'll be tuning in. So I'm gonna pass it on to my brother. He went to Wisconsin State, and my mother as well. There's both support, and my mother-in-law, she supports HBCU. So I'm gonna pass it on to them. Got a lot of HBCU alums on both sides of my family, so I'm gonna give that quick shout out to them as well. So thank y'all for tuning into this podcast, and have a great Thanksgiving. Don't get too fat. I will. And have fun watching great college football, FBS, FCS, and D2. So until next time.
Playoffs, FCS playoffs.
Yes.
ESPN Plus. Turkey Day Classic. Thursday, ESPN Plus. Alabama State, Tuskegee. And of course, on Saturday, Bayou Classic, Grambling, Southern, the granddaddy of them all. Watch them all while you're eating turkey.
And on that note, y'all take care. Peace out. And don't go to Central.